In the vast and powerful kingdom of ancient Persia, a great king named Xerxes ruled over many lands and peoples. From his grand palace in the city of Susa, he commanded armies and made laws for 127 provinces. Among the people living in his empire were the Jews, who had been brought there as exiles many years before. They lived quietly, following their own customs and faith, far from their ancestral home. King Xerxes was a man of immense wealth and power, known for throwing extravagant feasts that could last for months, showcasing the glorious majesty of his kingdom to all his officials and servants. One day, during a magnificent 7-day feast, King Xerxes made a command that would change the course of history. He ordered his wife, the beautiful Queen Vashti, to come before his guests and display her beauty. But Queen Vashti, feeling disrespected by this public demand, refused to obey the king's order. This defiance angered King Xerxes greatly. His advisors warned him that her actions could inspire other women in the kingdom to disobey their husbands. So, following their counsel, the king made a swift and severe decision. He deposed Queen Vashti, declaring that she would never again come before him. With the queen's throne now empty, the king's servants began a search throughout the entire kingdom for a new queen. They sought the most beautiful young women from every province to be brought to the royal palace. Among them was a young Jewish woman named Hadassah, who was also known by her Persian name, Esther. She was an orphan, raised with great love and care by her older cousin Mordecai. Esther possessed not only remarkable beauty, but also a gentle and kind spirit. Mordecai, who worked as an official at the king's gate, advised her to keep her Jewish heritage a secret, a piece of advice she wisely followed. After a year of preparations and beauty treatments in the royal harem, it was Esther's turn to go before King Xerxes. The moment the king saw her, he was captivated by her grace and charm more than any of the other women. He placed the royal crown upon her head and declared her his new queen, celebrating her coronation with a grand banquet in her honor. Esther, now the Queen of Persia, remembered her cousin's words and kept her identity hidden within the palace walls. She did not know it yet, but her new position was part of a much greater plan, one that would require extraordinary courage and faith. While Queen Esther settled into her new life, her cousin Mordecai continued his duties at the king's gate. One day, he overheard two of the king's officers plotting to harm King Xerxes. Being a loyal subject, Mordecai immediately sent a message to Esther, who then informed the king about the dangerous conspiracy, making sure to credit Mordecai for uncovering the plot. The king investigated the matter, found it to be true, and the two treacherous officials were punished. This important event was carefully recorded in the official chronicles of the kingdom, a detail that would later prove to be incredibly significant in the unfolding story. Around this time, King Xerxes promoted a man named Haman to be his highest official, second in command only to the king himself. Haman was a proud and arrogant man who demanded that everyone bow down to him whenever he passed by. All the royal officials at the king's gate obeyed, but Mordecai, firm in his Jewish faith that he should bow only to God, refused. Day after day, Mordecai stood tall, and Haman's anger grew into a burning rage. He was not content to punish only Mordecai. His hatred extended to all of Mordecai's people, the Jews, and he began to devise a terrible plan. Haman went to King Xerxes and spoke lies about the Jewish people. He told the king that there was a certain group of people scattered throughout the kingdom whose laws were different from all others and who did not obey the king's laws. He claimed they were a threat to the kingdom and offered a large sum of money to have them all destroyed. The king, trusting his chief advisor, gave Haman his signet ring, which gave Haman the power to issue any decree he wished. Haman then sent out an order to every province, declaring that on the 13th day of the 12th month, all Jews, young and old, women and children, were to be killed. When Mordecai learned of this horrible decree, he was filled with grief and tore his clothes, putting on sackcloth and ashes as a sign of deep mourning. He sent a copy of the edict to Queen Esther, urging her to go before the king and plead for her people. Esther was terrified, for it was forbidden to approach the king without being summoned, an offense punishable by death. But Mordecai sent back a powerful message. "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" His words ignited a spark of courage in Esther. She asked Mordecai to gather all the Jews in Susa to fast and pray for her for 3 days, and she and her maids would do the same. After 3 days of fasting and prayer, Queen Esther put on her finest royal robes and gathered all her courage. She walked to the inner court of the king's palace and stood where he could see her from his throne. It was a moment of immense risk, her life hanging in the balance. When King Xerxes saw her, his heart was softened. He held out his golden scepter toward her, a sign that her life was spared and she was welcome. "What is it, Queen Esther?" he asked. "What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom it will be given to you." Instead of revealing her true purpose, she cleverly invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. The king and Haman attended Esther's banquet that evening. As they were enjoying the feast, the king once again asked Esther what she desired. She still did not reveal her petition. Instead, with great wisdom, she invited them both to a second banquet to be held the very next day, promising to make her request known at that time. Haman left the palace feeling overjoyed and proud to be honored by the queen. But as he passed the king's gate, he saw Mordecai, who still refused to bow. His happiness instantly turned to fury, and he went home to plot Mordecai's demise with his wife and friends. That same night, a remarkable coincidence occurred. King Xerxes could not sleep, so he commanded that the Book of the Chronicles, the official records of his reign, be read to him. As the scribe read, the king was reminded of the time Mordecai had saved his life by exposing the assassination plot. He asked what honor or recognition Mordecai had received for this great service and was told that nothing had been done for him. At that very moment, Haman arrived at the palace, intending to ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai on the tall gallows he had just built. The king, however, spoke first. "What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?" Xerxes asked. Haman, in his arrogance, assumed the king was talking about him. He described a lavish ceremony. The man should be dressed in the king's own royal robes, placed on the king's horse, and led through the city streets by a high-ranking noble, proclaiming his honor. "Excellent," the king declared. "Go at once and do all that you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew." Haman was horrified and humiliated, but he had no choice but to obey. He had to publicly honor the very man he had planned to destroy that day. Later that day, Haman went to Queen Esther's second banquet, his heart heavy with humiliation and dread. During the feast, King Xerxes once again asked Esther to reveal her petition. This time she was ready. With tears in her eyes, she pleaded, "If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition, and spare my people. This is my request, for I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." The king was stunned and demanded to know who would dare to do such a thing. Esther bravely pointed and declared, "An adversary, an enemy, this vile Haman." The king erupted in a rage and stormed out into the palace garden. Haman, terrified for his life, fell upon the couch where Esther was reclining to beg for mercy. Just then, the king returned and misinterpreted the scene, becoming even more furious. At that moment, one of the king's attendants pointed out the 75-foot-tall gallows that Haman had built for Mordecai. The king gave a swift command, "Hang him on it." And so, Haman was executed on the very structure he had prepared for his enemy. His wicked plot had completely backfired, and his estate was given to Queen Esther, who appointed Mordecai to manage it. Even with Haman gone, the evil decree he had written still stood, for a law sealed with the king's ring could not be revoked. Esther once again went before the king, weeping and begging him to find a way to save her people. King Xerxes, wanting to help, gave his signet ring to Mordecai and told him to write a new decree in the king's name. The new edict granted the Jewish people throughout the Persian Empire the right to assemble and defend themselves against anyone who might attack them on the day Haman had chosen. This new law was sent out with great speed to all 127 provinces. On the appointed day, the tables were turned. Instead of being victims, the Jews were victorious over their enemies, and the officials in every province helped them. It was a day of great relief and deliverance. To remember this incredible turn of events, Mordecai and Esther established a new annual festival called Purim, named after the word pur, the lots Haman had cast to choose the day of their destruction. To this day, Purim is a joyous time of feasting, sharing gifts, and helping the poor, a powerful and hopeful reminder of how courage and faith can overcome hatred, and how one person standing up for what is right can save a nation.